The yeas are 227 and the nays are 194. The motion is adopted. Without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid on the table. The question is on passage of the bill. Those in favor will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. Gentleman from Florida.
Ask the yeas and nays.
The yeas and nays are requested. Those favoring a vote by the yeas and nays will rise. A sufficient number having risen, the yeas and nays are ordered. Members will record their votes by electronic device. This is a 5-minute vote.
And this Republican-sponsored bill would guarantee that essential government personnel continue to be paid in the event of a continuing shutdown. 5-minute vote on the House floor. And we'll get back to your calls. Geneva is in Garrett, Indiana. Republican caller.
Hi.
Hi there.
First of all, I want to thank God for our military. The military and the elderly, they definitely need to get this government in order, okay? They need paid. The military, they go and fight for our country, and you can see homeless people on the streets begging for food, money, and they have been in the military, okay? The elderly. You have people that have Meals on Wheels coming to their homes. If they cut all this out, these people are not going to be eating decent 3 meals a day. They're not. And as far as our government, the Republicans and the Democrats, they need to sit down, every one of them, in a room, locked. Don't let them out until this is settled. Because this is ridiculous. There is no reason for the United States to be in this mess.
All right, Geneva, thank you. Jakari is in Minneapolis, Minnesota, on the Democrats line.
How you doing today?
I'm doing fine, Jakari. Make sure that you mute your TV or radio and go ahead with your comments.
Mute my TV here. Just give me a second. All right. What I have to say is I'm 22 years old. I'm on my way to the military, and this mess we're in here is ridiculous. I mean, Republicans need to grow up, really. I mean, it's all our country. It's not just their country. It's not Republicans' country. This is to every Republican out there in the United States who's watching and listening to this. This is not your country. This is our country. Right now, our debt's ridiculous. Everything's going down the crap hole right now. And who's trying to stop it? The Democrats are trying to help. I mean, I hear people on TV saying this is all Obama's fault that we're in debt. No, this debt started with Bush Sr. That's truthfully say that. And I know a lot of people criticize that, but that's the truth. And I'm tired of it. I mean, we need to get this back together because this isn't working out. This isn't working at all.
All right, let's go to our others line. Chuck's in Syracuse, New York. Chuck, there you are. Chuck, hello.
Yeah, the thing that's really bothered me a lot is where people will not face truth and reality. They keep running around saying that they can't understand why the Republicans are doing this. On Obama's first election, that night, the 8 of them got together and said they were going to stop him. The next day, McConnell said they were going to stop him from doing anything. They've been stopping him. And one of the things that people better face truth and reality with the situation is it comes down to this. The Republicans are so darn afraid. They do not want to face the truth and reality that it's taking a black Democrat to straighten out the mess that was made by a white Republican. There's racism involved here, and the American people better start facing fact and truth and reality.
This vote is winding down. Again, news from, as we look live at the White House a moment ago, news from the White House that the president will appoint Janet Yellen as the next chairman of the Federal Reserve tomorrow afternoon at 3 p.m. Here's how it's being reported on the BBC. In a tweet from BBC Breaking News, they say that Fed Vice Chair Yellen will become the first woman to lead U.S. Central Bank if Congress confirms her nomination. That's from the BBC. Let's get one more call here. Joe's in Troy, Missouri, on the Republican line.
Yes, sir. Good evening.
Good evening.
Hey, I'm a Vietnam vet. I voted Republican all my life, and I got to tell you something. They have lost my respect, and they have also lost my vote. Thank you for your time.
All right, maybe we get one more. Randy's in the others line. He's in Charleston, South Carolina. Hi, Randy. Go ahead. Make it quick.
Yeah, these Republicans shutting the government down. It seems like they're trying to scare everybody, but yet they listen to bills come in and put people back to work. I think they need to just take everything. Don't pay anyone, and take all the food stamps, take everything from everybody, and let's just see what happens when nobody don't have nothing.
I'm going to let you go there. This vote is winding down. This is the one that deals with guaranteeing that certain essential government employees get their pay during the government shutdown. More votes ahead, more of your comments too here on C-SPAN.
On this vote, the yeas are 224, the nays are 197. The bill is passed. Without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid on the table. The unfinished business is the vote on passage of House Joint Resolution 89, on which the yeas and nays were ordered. The clerk will report the title of the joint resolution.
House Joint Resolution 89, joint resolution making appropriations for the salaries and related expenses of certain federal employees during a lapse in funding authority for fiscal year 2014 and for other purposes.
The question is on passage of the joint resolution. Members will record their votes by electronic device. This is a 5-minute vote.
And just a correction, the House just passed that bill that would create that bicameral, bipartisan working group on spending matters. They are voting now on the bill that deals with ensuring that certain essential government employees get paid during the shutdown. This is also a 5-minute vote. That previous vote passed, and it's been typical of these mini CRs or these piecemeal funding bills. It was 224 to 197. So let's get back to your calls on the government shutdown here. Day number 8. Richard is in in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, on our Democrats line.
Hello, how you doing?
I'm fine, Richard. Go ahead.
Hey, man, I want to tell y'all, man, what they need to do, they need to sit down and just hold a conversation. It'll be easy if they could just sit down and talk, because this is beginning to be ridiculous. You know what I'm saying? And I am an SSI recipient, and man, this is just way out of line. This doesn't make any sense. Barack Obama needs to come to his senses, and so do the Republicans, and get them into a silent, quiet room. Close the doors, and everybody sit there for a while and just hold a conversation, because this is headed in the wrong direction, you know, and that's all I got to say.
Let's go to Millie, who's in Sarasota, Florida, on our Republican line. Good evening.
Good evening. Back in 1979, in that era, I had the opportunity to have a wonderful conversation with our very highly respected senator from Vermont, George Aiken, and he told me several things about being an elected official and responsibilities. And he said that one of the first important things that he learned in Washington was that compromise hurts both sides. And then he waggled his finger in my face and said it again. And he said, I don't want you to ever forget that. I find it's really something that comes in handy in everyday life, actually. And when people do give up a little something in their compromise, they often feel that they have won something. They also feel they've lost something. But they might come together if each one of them was willing to give up a little bit. I also think that if they got some more of the women involved in making headway, it would help. Mothers and women are accustomed to settling little squabbles among little boys that are just being stubborn, possibly. And I would like to see more of the women being involved. And also...
Yeah, go ahead, Millie, go ahead.
Also, the news media, most of it, they're acting like a public relations organization for the administration. I think it's almost like another arm of government. And I think there's a lot of unfairness in how the real news and what's really happening, it's not being reported fairly and equally. So I wish that everybody in Congress could get the message from Senator Aiken. It makes a lot of sense to me. Thank you.
Appreciate you sharing your story with us. Let's see if we can get a couple of final tweets, and we may have a chance to get to more calls in the next vote. Just a couple of tweets here. C-SPAN chat is the hashtag. Wes says, what a shame we can't block open-air monuments. We can pay to block open-air monuments, but not death benefits to fallen soldiers. Also from Sean, who says the government is too big and too powerful, ruining so many American lives. Proof is in the shutdown. Ann says there is a moral cancer in this country. Its name is the Tea Party. And one more from Epiphany. All funding used to be voted on individually. Democrats just do it. America just doesn't want Obamacare. Again, the hashtag C-SPAN chat. More of your comments coming up, and possibly another vote here on the House floor, too.
On this vote, the yeas are 420, the nays are 0. The joint resolution is passed. Without objection, a motion to reconsider is laid on the table. Pursuant to Clause 8 of Rule 20, the unfinished business is the question on agreeing to the Speaker's approval of the journal, which the Chair will put de novo. The question is on agreeing to the Speaker's approval of the journal. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. In the opinion of the Chair, the ayes have it, and the journal stands approved. Pursuant to Section 3B of House Resolution 373, H.R. 3273 is laid on the table. The House will be in order. The House will be in order. Please remove your conversations from the House floor. The Chair will now entertain requests for 1-minute speeches. For what purpose does the gentleman from Pennsylvania seek recognition? Without objection, the gentleman from Pennsylvania is recognized for 1 minute. Would the gentleman suspend for 1 moment, please? The House will be in order. The House will be in order. Please remove your conversations from the House floor. The House will be in order. The gentleman from Pennsylvania is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, weeks ago, the administration reached out to Capitol Hill to continue budget negotiations. And according to the National Journal, and I quote, Majority Leader Reed's office had a message for them. Don't do it, end quote. Quote, the White House listened. The summit was next, and no serious talks have occurred since, end quotes, the article continued. As the government shutdown stretches into the second week, the article states the White House has embraced Reed's hardline, no negotiation stance, at least so far, end of quotes. Unfortunately, hardliner, non-negotiable posturing seems to be all Senator Majority Leader knows. Today, the House passed the Head Start for Low-Income Children's Act, the 10th bipartisan stopgap funding bill to pass the House since the federal shutdown began. The program remains a priority of the President, yet the White House just announced a veto threat on the bill, without doubt at the Senate Majority Leader's request. If this isn't a purely political move, I don't know what is. I urge the Senate and the President to join 57 of my Democrat colleagues who are supporting the solutions being put forth by the House. The American people deserve as much, and I yield back.
The gentleman's time has expired. For what purpose does the gentleman from New York seek recognition? Without objection.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise this evening to highlight just one of the stories that comes in each and every day from my congressional district, highlighting the unnecessary hardship the Republican government shutdown has brought upon the American people. One of my constituents who works in business aviation contacted my office just this week to tell me about the burden the shutdown has had on his business and his family's bottom line. During the government shutdown, aviation components cannot be produced, financed, bought, sold, inspected, or registered without the federal workers that are currently furloughed. Today, large parts of this industry and our economy at large simply cannot function. Stories like this will continue until the House brings up the Senate CR, which funds our government at the level House Republicans had fought for. Stories like these are not isolated to upstate New York. This is happening in countless corners of our nation, across all regions, in all of our districts back home. A piecemeal approach that picks winners and losers in our federal agencies is no way to run the country. Bring up the Senate CR, take yes for an answer, let's get this nation back to work.
The gentleman's time has expired. For what purpose does the gentleman from Florida seek recognition?
For 1 minute.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. There are just two issues stopping the Obama shutdown from ending. Number one, make Congress and the White House obey the same Obamacare rules as everyone else. Number two, the President let business off the hook for a year. We want workers to be let off the hook for a year too. That's what Republicans, Democrats, and Independents in my district all want. And that's what the Republican ask is: equal justice for all Americans. What's so hard to understand about that? It's really, really that simple. They will negotiate with Putin, Assad, even Iran, but not with House Republicans. That's not fair, that's not right, and it's not good for the United States of America. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield back.
The gentleman yields back. For what purpose does the gentleman from New York seek recognition? Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, one of the things I've enjoyed in this House is the sincerity. There's not a member of this House that thinks the President of the United States is going to delay, repeal, or tear apart the Affordable Care Act. But if there's politics involved, I understand that. I'm a politician. And it just seems to me that if you have a plan, a strategy, and the whole world is saying that a handful of people are destroying the credibility of the Republican Party, and they're taking down the party with them, and therefore taking down the Democrats with them, and taking down the Congress with them, and even the President of the United States, because these handful of people, then I think it's safe to say it's time to look for some credibility so that we can regain being a two-party state. So I didn't come here this morning to get arrested, but I did get arrested because there are tens of thousands and millions of people that want to become Americans. They don't want to knock Republicans. They don't want Democrats. They want to be Americans. Bring up the immigration bill. Let's vote these new, wonderful, new citizens in, and maybe they can bring some sense to the parties. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The gentleman's time has expired. For what purpose does the gentleman from Louisiana seek recognition? Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, I would like to repeat what my colleague from Florida said. My Democratic colleagues have suggested that if the House only passes the clean Senate CR, that we can move on with business. I will point out, if the House will only consider, if the Senate will only consider the House CR, we can also move on. But the problem is that there's two provisions. One provision takes away a sweetheart deal that only members of Congress and their staff get. And secondly, since the President delayed the mandate on employers to provide insurance for a year, similarly, we would delay the mandate on the employee to have that insurance. If she is relying upon her employer to provide the policy, what is she to do if he is given a break on not providing that policy? Now, we can quickly reopen the government. The American people, the House Republicans have voted a budget which would completely fund, but it just has those provisions which Senator Reid will not even negotiate over. He will not even come together to actually discuss these two things. So I asked Senator Reid to address it as a favor both to our country and to the American taxpayer, and I yield back.
The gentleman's time has expired. For what purpose does the gentleman from Georgia seek recognition?
To address the House for 1 minute and revise and send my remarks.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, over my years in Congress, I've had the honor of chairing several conference committees. And conference committees are set up when there's a disagreement between a House-passed bill and a Senate-passed bill. You sit down with your list of differences and you start sawing away at them, if you will. And that's, in fact, what the House has been doing the past 2 weeks in the midst of this shutdown, finding some things such as military pay, such as science, such as civilian furlough issues, such as health-related issues, finding some things that are less controversial in which we can agree so that we can get some momentum to come up with a big agreement. And indeed, the gap is large. We have a disagreement on Obamacare because it's 1/6 of the economy. It's a very big issue. Secondly, we have a disagreement on the debt ceiling. Do we continue along the path of spending that we are, or do we make corrections? And thirdly, we have a $90 billion gap between our spending level between the House and the Senate. These are big issues, but sometimes a long journey starts with small steps. That's why I urge our friends in the Senate to pass the legislation which the House has sent over to them, and then we can start focusing on the largest issues there are. Thank you.
Gentleman's time has expired. Are there any further requests for 1-minute speeches? The gentlewoman from Texas is recognized. For what purpose does the gentlewoman from Texas seek recognition?
Ask unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute.
Without objection.
Thank you.
The gentlewoman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, we in Texas know that when the cattle start stampeding, you're really in trouble. And so my friends on the other side of the aisle haven't realized that the cattle in the United States are stampeding. 57,000 seats of Head Start are gone. Veteran centers will be closed in a couple of days. Federal courts are looking at whether or not they can stay open past October 15th. U.S. attorneys are laying off various U.S. attorneys across America, up to 4,000. And we actually have rules in this House. The rules that brought about the agreement in the beginning of the year where we actually agreed to the 986 number that the Republicans have. We agreed to the tax reform that the Republicans had and Democrats agreed. But now they want to throw on us another super committee, fool's folly, talking about discretionary spending, the second the debt ceiling, and entitlement reform. All decent ideas, but open the government first. Get the bill on the floor that is clean. Open the government, raise the debt ceiling to pay out bills, let the American people get back to work, let our veterans get services.
Time
Stop
has expired.
throwing down another committee. We don't catch cattle. We don't go after cattle in Texas by throwing down a committee. We get it done. Let's get the job done. Let's stop the stampede.
Gentlewoman's time has expired. Further requests for 1 minute. Under the Speaker's announced policy of January 3, 2013, the gentleman from California, Mr. Garamendi, is recognized for 60 minutes as the designee of the Minority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, thank you. October the 8th. October the 8th. We're now 8 days into the shutdown of the government of the United States of America, presumed to be the strongest nation on this earth, presumed to be the greatest economic power, presumed to be the world's oldest democracy. Perhaps oldest, but not functioning. Why? Why are we in this situation? 8 days without a functioning government. What in the world is the Republican Party doing to this nation? And why? Why? It's hard to say why, because every day the goalpost changes. Every day a different demand, and today yet a new demand. But what's the result of all of this? What does all of this mean? It means that this nation is humiliated by this shutdown. Speaker Boehner, let your people go. Speaker Boehner, let your people go and vote. Why not? We think there's a majority. Let's see here. There's 198 Democrats that will vote for the reopening of this government tonight. Call us back into session, Mr. Boehner. 198 Democrats. And by the public record, there are 23 or more Republicans that have said they'd vote for a clean CR. Mr. Speaker, let your people go and vote. What does it mean that the government's shut down? What does it mean to Americans? I'll tell you what it means in my district. It means that the daycare centers, the early childhood education programs, the levee improvements, and indeed even today we've learned that the burials of those brave men and women, men in this case, that have recently been killed in the war in Afghanistan. Their families will not receive the $100,000 that's been set aside for them. Oh, I know. We have a vote here. This is the 8th day of the shutdown. And we have, in this House, passed 8 bills to appropriate pieces of this government. These are the 12 appropriation bills. These are the 12 appropriation bills that fund every function of government, whether it's the military, whether it's the farm programs, the daycare programs, the health care programs, the Center for Disease Control. Here they are, more than 1,000 specific items. And in 8 days, our Republican colleagues have put before us 8 bills to fund 8 of the more than 1,000. At this rate, it'll be 2020 before this government fully is functional. How foolish, how stupid, how humiliating for this nation. Mr. Speaker, let your people vote. Let us vote. Let us vote on reopening this government. The votes are there. A simple blackboard will tell you the votes are there. Tonight, call us back to session. And tomorrow morning, the people of America, the people across this world will see the strongest nation in the world, the government of that nation, functioning once again. How do I go back to my district and tell the people at the Dixon National Cemetery that those burials aren't going to take place? How do I go back to my district and tell them, yeah, maybe they ought to see this? In California, Northern California, it's hunting season. Opened on Saturday. But the refuges across this great nation are closed to hunters, the duck hunters, the men and women that want to recreate in those areas. And if you're not a hunter, maybe you're a fisherman. But don't go to a refuge. Don't go to the Bureau of Land Management fishing areas. Don't try to put your boat in the water at the national parks. You can't do it because this government's shut down. Mr. Speaker, let your people vote. Let us all vote. Let us reopen this government. We have several of my colleagues with me tonight. We're going to cover this issue. How much I would prefer to be here with my colleagues from New York and other states to talk about putting Americans back to work. And I guess we are in a way, putting the federal employees back to work. Mr. Paul Tonko from the great state of New York, thanks for joining us once again.
My pleasure. I appreciate the gentleman from California bringing us together tonight in thoughtful discussion about what is chaos here in the nation's capital. So Representative Garamendi, thank you for bringing us together with our representatives from New Jersey and from Connecticut and from Pennsylvania and others who will probably join us that will speak to the unnecessary pain that has trickled into the lives of far too many working families across this country and impacting so many small businesses from coast to coast with the ill effects of a government shutdown, a Republican government shutdown, simply because, as you've just heard the gentleman from California indicate, we need to vote on a CR, a continuing resolution, a bill that allows for the budget to continue into a date certain, as mentioned in that bill, most likely 2 months, 8 weeks as an extender into perhaps mid-December. Why do we need to do that? So that we can bring stability into the process, allow government to be funded, allow for the doors to be opened, allow for the lights to go on, and reopen government. That's the first step in the sequence. Secondly, another cornerstone bit of legislation coming quickly upon us, giving the green light to America to pay her bills. America's working families understand what that's about. They know that they play by the rules. They roll up their sleeves. They work hard. They expect to taste success, and they pay their bills on time, and they expect their beloved country to do the same thing. Our second step in the process. And then thirdly, buying this 8 weeks of time allows us to immediately name those individuals who will be the representatives for the majority and minority parties in each of the houses of Congress to sit down and nail down a budget in those ensuing 8 weeks to make certain that stability again is the outcome. That's what we're asking for. Mr. Speaker, you are the Speaker not only to the Tea Party, not only to the Republican Conference, but to the entire House, the United States House of Representatives. Let all of us vote on what is a clean CR, which has been approved by the United States Senate, and by the way, in negotiations to date, accepts your number, the lowest number in the process. We're not happy with that number, but we're going to cave to your request to allow for government to be refunded, to be reopened, and for us to move forward. That's what it's about. We're asking for dignity to be expressed for America's working families. We're allowing for certainty to be the outcome for our small business community so that we can grow our economy, allow for the climate that produces both public and private sector job growth that allows us to move forward with a sense of hope. That's what the request is here. Why won't you let us vote on a clean CR? Are you fearful that it might pass? Are you fearful that you don't get your way? Because, you know, in the 45 votes that have been taken on a continuing or on a debt ceiling limit vote since the days of President Ronald Reagan, those 45 measures have been approved 38 times without any bells and whistles, and certainly unprecedented to have attached to the vote some sort of clutter that deals with the repeal of the Affordable Care Act. Never have we reached to that sort of negotiated outcome where we're repealing the law of the land. In this case, the law of the land that is 3 years old, was approved by a majority in the House of Representatives, was approved by a supermajority in the United States Senate, was tested at your concern, because of your concern, before the highest court of the land, and the Supreme Court gave it thumbs up in meeting the constitutionality test. What more do we need to do to convince you? Let me just say this, Representative Garamendi, quickly so we can get to our colleagues. I want to share with you some of the results in these few 8 days already, but painful 8 days for far too many. By the end of this month, food pantries like the one in my district in Cohoes, New York, may not have the money to stay open. That is a situation with many of our food pantries. This is a facility that helps feed 215 hungry families in the capital region of New York State. Projections are that one of the providers of electronics for our fighter jets, our submarines, and our helicopters in Saratoga Springs, New York, in the 20th Congressional District that I represent, have grinded to a halt as inspectors can't complete contracts and new orders cannot come in. We also have impacting us a forensic meteorology business in Niskayuna, New York, again in the 20th Congressional District of New York, that works each and every day with the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, that helps bring benefits to all of us from the devastation of Mother Nature. These are jobs that are meaningful to the quality of life of people across this country, that are meaningful to working families who are now without jobs, people who are not getting paid and showing up to work. These are devastating consequences to the economy. We implore the leadership of this House, we implore the Speaker to call for a vote on a clean, continuing resolution that embraces your number, the lowest number in negotiations that we will settle upon. We will offer our votes for that kind of measure. Only give us that chance so that America can have her government funded, we can move forward to advance the debt ceiling limit bill vote that will allow for a government for America to pay her bills, and then finally move to that conference table where representation from both parties in each of the houses will nail down a budget in the ensuing 8 weeks. That will bring stability to the economy, will bring economic and social justice to the people of this great country. Let's move forward with that sense of fairness. And thank you very much to the gentleman from California.
Thank you, Mr. Tonko. The gentleman from New York. I'd like now to bring to the microphone our friend from the great state of Connecticut, John Larson. Mr. Larson.
I thank the gentleman from California for organizing this hour, and I appreciate the eloquence of our colleague from New York, both of whom have addressed the most important issue of the day. In fact, the last 8 days, as Mr. Garamendi has articulated. We find ourselves dealing with the issue du jour. Each day the goalposts move. Each day the American public sits in utter amazement and disgust with its elected representatives. It is astounding to them to see the greatest nation in the world brought to its knees. You know, our forefathers were very prescient, and certainly George Washington, who Daniel Webster, the senator from Massachusetts in this chamber, well, actually it would have been down the hall, got up on the 100th anniversary of George Washington's birth and talked about the president's admonitions. Amongst his keenest admonitions was about that of excessive party spirit. Now, on Washington's day, there weren't political parties as we know them. It wasn't Democrat or Republic. It was Federalists or Anti-Federalists. But he knew very well and was concerned deeply about what factions could do. And he warned about the outside influence of party. But what he was most concerned about is that what happens within a government if people in that very government or are at war with their own existence, are working against the interest of the government and therefore the people. And so we find ourselves this evening as members of the minority coming to this floor and asking for one simple thing from the majority, and that is a vote. Now, we understand that we have asked for votes on this floor. We've asked for votes to put the country back to work. As the gentleman from California has articulated on many occasions, to come here and talk about making things in America and allowing a vote to put us back to work. We've been denied that opportunity. We've been denied the opportunity here to vote on nutrition and funding and making sure that important bills like the agriculture bill, that the very poor amongst us and the very needy are fed. We've been denied an opportunity to vote on immigration, as you heard Charlie Rangel talk about so nobly earlier this evening. And we've also, most importantly, been denied a vote here that is fundamental to our democracy. The most fundamental thing and the most patriotic thing that we do in a society is vote. And yet here, because of the tyranny of the majority, 200-plus Democrats are not allowed a vote. More importantly, the American people are not allowed a vote on the continuing of its government. And as the gentleman from New York pointed out, not only is it the continuation and shutdown of government, but on the near horizon, defaulting on the full faith and credit of the American people. This is unconscionable. But Washington was prescient when a few dangerously are at war with their own government who seek to bring that government down, who seek to bring the government down through a shutdown, and then by not paying the bills that this body and the other body have racked up, the greatest nation on the face of the earth. We need to be able to express the will of the people. All we ask of the majority party is for a vote, a simple vote, as the gentleman from New York said, on a continuing resolution, unencumbered, and does nothing more, and at the levels that they have requested, but put the nation back to work, and then respond quickly to the need to pay our debts without being held hostage. You are not holding Barack Obama hostage, Mr. Speaker. You are not holding the Democrats in Congress hostage, Mr. Speaker. You are holding the people of the United States hostage. In the sake of fairness and being responsible, bring the bill to the floor for a vote. Allow the minority the opportunity to vote. If you don't have the votes, let it be so. And let the world know, and let every American citizen know where their members stand on this issue. Stand with your country. Do not let it be shut down. Do not let it default. At least give us a vote. I yield back to the gentleman from California.
Thank you very much, Mr. Larson. A vote. That's what the democracy is all about. And we're asking for a simple thing, the opportunity to vote on extending the operations of the American government. Now I'd like to turn to Mr. Doyle from the great state of Pennsylvania. Mr. Doyle.
I thank my colleague from California and my colleagues from New York and Connecticut. Many of us that you'll see on the floor tonight, we're not regulars. We're not people that come to the floor often to speak. But I think many of us feel it's important for the American people to understand the nature of this task, this battle that we face on their behalf. You know, we hear a lot from Republicans about the president not wanting to negotiate, not wanting to talk, that Democrats don't want to negotiate. And they've been pretty good at saying that over and over and over again, Mr. Speaker. But what they're not telling the American people is the nature of the negotiation that they want to have. And I think it's important that that be revealed. You know, what makes me so angry, and the reason I'm here tonight, is what we face in the country right now is completely a manufactured crisis. There is no structural economic reason that our country should be facing default come the 17th of this month. There's no reason that 800 federal employees aren't working. There's no structural, no reason for this to happen. This is being manufactured by a party because they're trying to get something that they've not been able to get at the ballot box. We have divided government. The Republicans control the House of Representatives. The Senate is controlled by the Democratic Party. We have a Democratic president. The Republicans had two goals going into this manufactured crisis. One was to destroy the health care bill. Now, this is a bill that passed the House of Representatives. It passed the Senate. It was signed by the president. It was upheld by the Supreme Court, and we had a presidential election, and their candidate said on day one of his new administration, the first thing he would do if elected was to repeal the Affordable Care Act. That gentleman lost by 5 million votes. So, what they can't accomplish at the ballot box, they now were looking for a way to accomplish here. But it couldn't be done through the regular process, Mr. Speaker. It couldn't be done through the regular order. So now comes this ingenious idea, hatched by the Tea Party wing of the Republican Party, to say, here's what we'll do. We'll wait for the end of the fiscal year to come, and we'll say, we're going to shut the government down unless you repeal Obamacare. You know, I was on this floor a couple days ago and read something on the floor that I had saw on the Internet by a young man by the name of Judd Lagom. I hope I've said his last name correctly. And he put an analogy about what we were actually facing. He said it's sort of like someone comes up to you and says, I want to burn down your house. And you look at the guy and you say, no. And you say, well, I just want to burn down the second floor. And you tell him no. And he goes, well, what about your garage? Can I burn your garage down? You say, no. And the guy said, well, let's just sit down and talk about what part of your house I can burn down. And you look at the guy and you say, no. And he goes, you see, you're not compromising. This is what we're facing in this so-called rigged negotiation. What Republicans are saying is, defund Obamacare, we'll open up the government. We said no. Then they said, well, delay Obamacare for a year, and we'll open up the government. And we said no. And then they said, well, just get rid of that individual mandate, which effectively kills the health care bill. And we said no. And then they said, well, will you just sit down and negotiate with us and tell us what part of the Affordable Care Act we can get rid of? And we said there's 20 million Americans that are counting on this bill. It's the law of the land. The answer is no. And they look at us and say the Democrats don't want to negotiate. The president doesn't want to negotiate. Well, I got news for my friends over there. We're not going to negotiate the rights of 20 million uninsured Americans because they can't get this done at the ballot box. So now, Mr. Speaker, what's the new strategy? They've shifted off of the health care bill now because the American public, by margins of over 70%, have said, we don't want you to shut the government down to try to get rid of the Affordable Care Act. So now where have they moved? To the Ryan budget. What's the Ryan budget? It's a budget that keeps us in sequester. It's a budget that does not invest in our infrastructure. It's a budget that does not invest in the education of our children. It's a budget that makes it impossible for this economy to grow. And it's a budget that threatens the social safety net that many of our senior citizens depend on. And they couldn't get it passed in the regular order. They couldn't get it passed in the own House of Representatives for a long time. They were afraid to put the bill on the floor. And they certainly couldn't get it passed in the Senate, and they knew the president wouldn't sign it. So what's the strategy now? This new rigged negotiation that we're being asked to have with our friends is give us pieces of the Ryan budget, and in return, we'll open up the government and we'll raise the debt ceiling. But only if you give us what we want in the Ryan budget. Mr. Speaker, we want to have a budget negotiation with our friends on the Republican side. The House has passed a budget. The Senate has passed a budget. The numbers, there's a great disparity in the numbers. Democrats believe in investing in America. We want to rebuild our roads and bridges and sewer systems. We want to invest in the education of our children. We want to protect our seniors and our veterans. It costs money to do that, Mr. Speaker, so there is a difference. But we're ready and we're willing to appoint conferees tomorrow to sit down and have a negotiation. I want the American public to understand that we have asked 18 times to appoint conferees to negotiate the differences in the Senate budget and the House budget, and all 18 times the Republicans in the House have said no. So, Mr. Speaker, I would just say if there's someone in this House that's not willing to negotiate, It's our friends on the Republican side of the aisle. The American people deserve a budget negotiation where we sit down and settle our differences. We're not going to get everything we want, Mr. Speaker. It's divided government. The Republicans are going to get something in this budget negotiation. The Democrats are going to get something in this budget negotiation. But the country moves forward, we pay our bills, and we live to fight another day. Mr. Speaker, in closing, let me say to the American people, we will not be part of a rigged negotiation where democratic priorities and principles aren't allowed to be discussed, only that which the Republicans couldn't get in the ballot box that they're trying to get now by holding a gun to our head. That's not the way you do business in the United States of America. That kind of behavior has to be stopped. Mr. Speaker, for the good of the American people, I hope Republicans will come to their senses, pass a clean CR, and let's sit down and negotiate a budget agreement for the American people and move this country forward. I thank you for giving me this time, and I yield back to you.
Mr. Doyle, thank you so very much. The Republican shutdown has to end. It has to end, and how correct you are about the negotiations. Just this afternoon, or this evening actually, they put a proposal on the floor to create some sort of a negotiating committee that did not have all of the issues before them, as you so correctly pointed out. Only their set of issues were to be allowed to be discussed by that negotiating committee. None of the issues that we care about on the Democratic side, hardly a negotiating opportunity. I'd like now to call upon my friend from the great state of New Jersey, Mr. Bill Parcells. Mr. Parcells.
That's the coach of the Giants. I'm just Bill Pasquarello. That's Mr. Speaker, how are you tonight? Thank you, Mr. Garamendi, for bringing us all together tonight. I couldn't stand with better Americans than I'm standing with tonight. I mean that. Mr. Speaker, the latest super committee plan that folks on the other side of the aisle gave us today is really absurd. In fact, as a member of the Budget Committee, this newfound Republican insistence on negotiations, referred to by Mr. Doyle from Pennsylvania, is mind-boggling. Since my colleagues have spent the last 6 months avoiding negotiations, and I didn't come here tonight to water the wine. So we're going to say it like it is. My fellow Americans, this House of Representatives passed its budget over 200 days ago, on March 21st. Then the Senate passed its budget 2 days later. Now think about what I just said. What happened to it? Well, the usual protocol is that the two sides name conferees, they come together in conference, and they work out a budget. That didn't happen. That's 6 months ago. We've been asking to go to conference so we can resolve our differences, and there are always differences within parties, between parties, you name it. We want to fund the government. We want to get rid of sequestration. Like Chairman Rogers said on July the 31st, 2013, I believe the House has made its choice. Sequestration, it's unrealistic, ill-conceived, discretionary cuts, which must be brought to an end. Mr. Rogers is the chairman. He's a Republican. He said that. I didn't say that. He put it better than I could ever even imagine to say it. So, what happened? Democrats attempted to go to conference 20 times. The Republicans objected every single time. Fact check this. Over here in the House, we've got almost 200 members who've signed a discharge petition calling for a conference on the budget. We've tried 4 times to bring the resolution to the floor. Leader Pelosi even went so far as to name conferees. Some of them are in this room. Some of us are conferees. She did that on June the 27th. What's the date today? October the 8th? October 8th. June the 27th. So why, after this stalling, has the Republicans finally found religion and now they want to negotiate? I'll tell you why. We've just discovered we have a phantom government in the United States. Every congressman, every House member, every Senate member should be concerned that they're elected by the people of this country, be they Democrat, Republican, Independent, Libertarian, doesn't matter. They've been elected. They stood for election, and we respect that, regardless of denomination, because we know that neither party is ever privy to virtue. Come on. We all share in the pluses. We share in the minuses. Never one party that has all the answers. We know that. But why? Well, just this past Saturday, October the 5th, we had a front-page story in the New York Times. It was mind-boggling, that article. Here was the title of the article: "The Federal Budget Crisis, Months in Planning." Well, I don't remember planning this. I don't know if any Republicans were out planning this. Who in God's name are they talking about? And this is what it says in the article in the second paragraph, which refers to a manifesto put together by non-elected people in this country. Hear me, America, hear me. They sat down one morning in a location the members insist on keeping secret. Wow. And came little noticed, a blueprint, quote unquote. This is what they said, Mr. Speaker. Blueprint to defunding Obamacare, signed by, oh, you're going to love this, Ed Meese. Boy, there's a name that props up. Again, you know, I can't believe it. Ed Meese. It's not funny. It's serious. A phantom government. Leaders of more than 36 conservative groups. I will put in the record tonight who those groups are. And I got part of their manifesto. Listen to this. This is what they put together. I'm sure that there are only a few congressmen on the other side that even knew about this. It says this: conservatives should not approve a CR unless it defunds Obamacare. This includes Obamacare's unworkable exchanges, unsustainable Medicaid expansion, and attack on life and religious liberty. They said that February the 14th of 2013. This did not just happen, Mr. Speaker. It didn't happen. It wasn't an accident. It was planned. That is the lowest thing you could ever read about a government. That wasn't even elected. Who the heck are these people to decide what we're going to do? Now we know why Mr. Ryan did not want to go to conference. Now we know why Mr. Boehner did not want to go to conference. Because that was not the plan. Read it. Judge for yourself. Judge for yourself. It also said this, that these 30 groups, and the names of each of the groups beside Mr. Meese's are right here. You got every right-wing group in the universe. They go into this manifesto on Medicaid expansion, permanent appropriations, implementation. They want to run the government. These people actually wanted to run the government. My friends, the Republicans don't want to negotiate. They want to use this shutdown and the threat of default to invalidate the results of, an election last November. These people weren't elected. We were elected. And I love debating people from the other side who are elected. That's their God-given right. That's what liberty is all about. Why don't they come in here, this shadow government, this phantom group, why don't they stand there and tell us who they talk to within the Republican Party? Tell us. America has a right to know. Don't you talk to me, Mr. Speaker, about let's have transparency in government when you have this vagabond group out here funded by, guess, I'll give you 3 guesses. No, I'll only give you 1 guess. The Koch brothers. They think they're running this government. The Supreme Court heard another case today. Isn't that interesting? This is mild compared to what would happen if they're able to do and spend as much money as they want. I did not come here to water the wine. And you better listen to it. And every member of the staff better listen. Because they've tried every trick in the book. Putting your own health care in jeopardy. Saying that you get a subsidy from the government when it's just like any company who in some way contributes to your health care. Somebody gets hired by the federal government to be a secretary at $20,000, $25,000. Their cost of their health care will go up between $5,200 and $12,000. How are you going to live on that? Being a staff member here on the floor back in your districts. They'll stop at nothing. Nothing. They'll bring the government down at any cost. At any cost. The November election apparently did not occur in their minds. We're dealing with dangerous people. Either they're on hallucinogenic drugs or they just lost their minds. This is what we're dealing with. To bring us to this precipice only a few days away, something's wrong. This is not how we debate things in the United States of America. This is not in any manner, shape, or form. As President Obama said, Democrats are willing to negotiate, but not with a gun to our heads. Never. I'm from Paterson, New Jersey. You never put a gun to my head. I got news for you. Let's end this irresponsible shutdown and default threat, and let's get back to work. That's what we were sent here for. And I yield back, and I thank you, Mr. Garamendi, for your patience.
Thank you. Mr. Parcells, thank you very much. Whether you're from New Jersey or wherever, I am not about to threaten